All right. We are live on the Help a Teacher Facebook page every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central. And listen, man, last week we had the amazing, talented, wonderful Pamela Davis on, and we chatted about all things nutrition and exercise and that crazy, just mental and psychological and physical transformation she has had, and all that it's done with her in her life, in her personal life, in her professional life, in the classroom, in her home, and that is amazing. And today, man, we're going to stay with that same thought, like getting ourselves healthy. And this week, what I thought we do is, I guess it's emotional health and self-care. I'm not sure how to talk about it, but here's what I know is like teaching is one of the most incredibly just stressful and exhausting professions on the planet. And here's the crazy part about it. It's the only profession I know of where a first day teacher, it's their first day on the job, a first day teacher has the same expectations put upon them as like a 35-year veteran. And like that alone, man, like the stress of that. We got some kid in the classroom and they don't know what they're trying to control the class. There's classroom management issues and behavior, and there's all kind of stuff. And by the way, they're supposed to teach somebody something. And that alone right there, the stress of that is so much to handle. And that's just the first year, not the like those who's been in this business for decades. And here's the other thing, this in this profession, we lose. I think the research is somewhere between 40 and 50% of teachers every 5 years. Like they burn out, they quit. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing for all of them. Look, man, this ain't for everybody, but for lots of them, we've lost some amazing, talented, wonderfully, just brilliant teachers along the way, simply because of just it's a lack of ability to manage the exhaustion and the stress and the anxiety and all that goes along with this thing. And all right, I'm getting on a rant now, but look, man, here's the other thing. In addition to that, who's drawn to this profession are people that just like on a DNA level, they're emotional people. Like a lot of us, like I don't think all that logically. Like I'm an emotionally based guy, and then when you take on that emotion and the emotions of others and all the stuff and the trauma that these kids go through, and now you accept that into your life, it just compounds upon itself day after day, year after year. It gets harder and harder and harder. And this might be, I don't know, man, this might be this single profession in kind of a social service world where I don't think anybody's offering any kind of training for that. I know like for if you're an EMT or a firefighter or a police officer or a nurse, there's trauma, they you sit down, you talk with somebody before you go on. But in teaching, if something happens every day in the classroom, and oftentimes we don't know how to do with it. What happens is we'll go to the teacher workroom or sit down at lunch with your lunch bunch, and there's your crew, and you say, "Oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened in my class today." And then kind of the therapy is the processing of it all, as everybody starts piling on with what happened in their classroom, and now we're in this downward spiral of anxiety. And I know you need to talk about it, but I'm not sure how beneficial that is. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to speak with an expert, a thought leader in the world of teacher self-care. And Kristin McKeown is she's amazing. We found each other online, and we chatted the other day, and she's got a lot of this stuff figured out. She's been in the classroom for decades, like I think like a quarter century, and now she's dedicated her life to making a difference in the lives of teachers and helping them stay healthy and connected and grounded with a passion that they have for making a difference in the lives of kids. All right, so here we go. Kristin, you are, if I remember right, is it Colorado?
I am. I'm in Denver. Yes.
Denver. All right. All
Yes.
right. So I always have to, anytime I hear Denver, like I'm assuming you're in the middle of a snowstorm or there's an avalanche about to happen.
It did snow yesterday, but it was beautiful and sunny today. So we're good.
Yeah. All right. So here's what I want to know. Like, here's what I have found, like we talked about, it's somewhere close to 50% of teachers burn out every 5 years. And you know what? It's worse. Here's worse. It's worse in really high poverty schools. I know there it's 20% of teachers turnover every year in those
Yeah.
schools. And but those teachers that are in this game for decades, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
No, listen, some are burnt out, but they stay in the classroom. Like we've seen
Right.
those. But isn't it true? Like you've walked down the hallway and you've looked in classroom, and there's a veteran teacher who's been in this game for decades, and they have the same amount of passion and
Mm-hmm.
excitement and joy, and they're just immersed. You can tell that like they're lost in the moment of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And here's like I know like for some of that group, some of that population, I know that it is just like a DNA thing. That's kind of how they show up on a planet.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I know for sure that there's another part of that population. They have learned some strategies over time,
Mm-hmm.
maybe by chance. But what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping is, I mean, there's got to be a recipe. There's got to be something, some sort of set of skills and strategies that we can learn to keep us healthy and centered and grounded and excited and connected to the passion that we have for making a difference in the lives of kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say for me, it's funny when it comes to this whole idea of teacher self-care and all the things relating to that.
Yeah.
I created the business, my online business, Teaching Balance, for the purpose of really helping to support my colleagues in education and hopefully to manage their stress. And for a long time, it was more about mindfulness and it was more about self-care, and all of that's really important. But I noticed that I was really dancing around the fact that really what it comes down to, in my opinion, what I really think can be the special sauce for people when it comes to sustainable self-care is meditation. Now, I know a lot of people think like, oh, that's not me. I'm too like, jittery, or I tried and it didn't work for me, or whatever it might be. But I think the problem with that is that people have this like idea in their head of what it's supposed to be or how it's supposed to look or feel. And most of the time, that's actually really, a misunderstanding, or, not really what it can be. And so they think like, oh, it's not for me. That doesn't work. Or it has to be, 20 minutes with chimes and incense, all of that kind of stuff. And so I've just recently finally come around to the realization for myself, which I think is helpful when I communicate with other people in education, that from my perspective, meditation is really what makes the difference. And when it comes to that, I really think that it will just help you to keep going with your self-care, which I think is really the key. So that's sort of my like baseline perspective when it comes to that.
Yeah. Here's what all right, listen. Like anytime
Do you
somebody says
meditate?
meditate, just wait a second. Don't put me on the spot, man. Thought we were friends. All right, so
Yeah.
here's what I first of all I can't when the first thing I think of is the meditation
Right.
is there's a group of people sitting cross-legged on
Mm-hmm.
crisscross applesauce style,
Right.
and first of all I'm too old, I'm too limber, I can't even get in that position.
Right. Right.
There's my
Right.
first problem. But here's what it is I have checked it out, and when I like the picture I have in my mind isn't reality, because when I start looking at who I know
Mm-hmm.
that uses meditation in their life, I mean like the first like the one on the opposite end of the spectrum is like Howard Stern, never misses a day.
Oh yeah, I'm a
You
big
know,
fan actually. Yeah.
there's multiple UFC fighters that do that, and they're like the most violent sport on the planet, and the
Mm-hmm.
most aggressive alpha type business leaders. Like it's a who's who of that list that uses meditation. So
Yeah.
I think like if it, like it doesn't have to be like the hippie thing, and I can't grow a
Yeah.
beard that long because it starts to itch. And
Right. Right.
I don't
Right.
have any
Yeah.
crystals in my house either.
No, oh, well, you're missing out there. But no, it doesn't have to look like that. And it's funny what I appreciate about the fact that mindfulness as a term has become so much more mainstream in the past few years is I don't really have to overcome that hump as much as, it used to be, but in the past, it's almost like where yoga is today. It's so much more mainstream and not considered to be very fringe or too metaphysical. It's very
Yeah.
much the same way with mindfulness, and I'm kind of coming into it in a good time. When I first started I had to really explain things a little bit more, but the idea behind it is, and you've probably seen this, it's not, as you just said, it's like athletes, it's these high performing people, it's broad, it's at Google, it's just one of those things where it's not just the traditional perception of what meditation is. And I think that's great because there really is nothing but positivity, for all intents and purposes, that can come from it. And if we can let go of those, not only those stereotypes, but also just this idea that it has to look a certain way, or that it doesn't count if you're lying down, or it doesn't count if it's only 5 minutes. It totally does. And even when you're sitting and you're thinking like, this isn't working, your mind is just all over the place all the time, it's a very common misconception that meditation is supposed to be like quieting your mind or stopping thinking, because that's actually not possible. At least it's not possible for me. And so instead, what you're doing, and this is probably the best way for me to summarize it, at least when it comes to mindfulness meditation, is you're just being profoundly aware and observant of whatever is going on in your mind. And you're doing that in a very accepting and non-judgmental and curious way. And so it's not about trying to be like, I have to stop thinking, I have to stop thinking. You just notice that your mind has wandered, and then you bring it back. And you do that over and over and over again. And so it's not only an exercise in focus, and it's that moment when you notice that your mind has wandered to like thinking about your list of to-dos or replaying something that happened in the classroom that day. When you notice, that's the magic moment when then you are actually building up your mindfulness muscle, so to speak, and increasing your attentiveness, increasing your focus, increasing your self-awareness. And so, as crazy as it sounds, the more your mind is all over the place when you're meditating, the more you're actually benefiting, which sounds like completely counterintuitive, but there is something to be said for that. And it's not always peaceful, but it's still beneficial, even if you don't necessarily have this ideal peaceful moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something maybe that might be analogous to the consistency of exercise, or just going to the gym or whatever exercise.
Yeah.
Even when you're sore and you're tired and you don't want to do it, it's those days that really matter the most.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny because there's really two things I could say about that. One is I'm a big fan of encouraging people to do it first thing in the morning. I know we get up so early. So it's so messed up. Like I resisted it for the longest time because like I just wanted to be in my warm covers until that final moment, that final snooze, until I had to like jet into the shower and start my day. But if you can just one less snooze, get up, and allow yourself just to have that 5 minutes, or if you have more time, 10 minutes, and just sit first thing, you're actually more attuned to having it be a little bit calmer because you haven't already had all the things happen to you that you have to think about. And it's just ideal. But if that doesn't work for you, I actually have 4 particular times that I think are the best. That's the best before you go to bed at night. If a lot of people love to do that, I'm not as much a fan of that because I like to read, because I'm a former English teacher and a former librarian. And so that's, I have to have my go to bed reading time. But the other 2 times, which I think this hopefully will resonate, with the audience, is in your car, either as soon as you get to school in the morning, just park your car. Lots of people do it. They're listening to podcasts, they're listening to NPR, they're listening to, audiobook or whatever. Nobody's going to think it's weird if you sit in your car for an extra 5 minutes. Don't go in the building, because you're not going to get it done. If you go into the building, you'll get interrupted or something will come up. And then the other one, the final one that I would offer, is in your car before you actually get home. So just pull over in a place that feels safe and just sit and do your meditation for 5 minutes, because whomever might be waiting for you at home doesn't know that you're only a block away, except maybe your dog. Your dog will probably know that you're a few minutes away. But other than that, it's just a really good time, because one of the big things that's an issue is carving out the time. And it's so hard. And so a lot of what I do, interestingly, is more about habit building, helping people build the habit, and the meditation part. But it's the habit building that people have the hardest time with. And so I would say first thing in the morning, last thing before you go to sleep, in your car, when you get to school, in your car, just before you get home.
What I found is, like the hardest part, I think, for lots of people is it's like taking the 5 minutes to do that instead of scrolling on the phone.
Well, I have my phone with me. I used to have this like library case on it. Now I just have a regular green case. I love my phone more than is really probably in my best interest. So I so get it. But what I would say is, if it's possible to do a meditation before you engage with your phone in any other way. So it could be something that you listen to on your phone, or, some other way of doing that, even if it's just a timer or your watch or whatever. But it really, I mean, so many things that I've read around when people get up, the first thing they do is they get on their phones, they look at emails, social media, and it's just not a great way to start your day, unfortunately, because it already
Yeah.
kind of like agitates you when really it's so much better for you to ease into your day. And I would say ideally by meditating.
Hey, hey, here's what's interesting is one of the things I do is chat about the tiniest tiny things that make the biggest profound difference in your professional life as an educator. And
Mm-hmm.
and one of those things is really getting connected with what you want for your kids. Like
Mm,
digging down deep, like what's the real lesson of your classroom? If you
mm-hmm.
could have anything for your kids as a
Right.
result of them spending their lives with you, the
Mm-hmm.
lesson I'm going to be talking about like 40 years from now at the reunion, and they're
Right.
gathered around the table and they're and they're reflecting on your class. They're
Mm-hmm.
not going to remember the content. They're not going to remember
Yeah.
the Pythagorean theorem or the periodic table or
Parts of speech.
yeah, and like yeah, all that stuff. Or you in your library. What do we have? Like when I was in high school, we had the Dewey Decimal System.
We still have
No,
that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing, man. Like what is that lesson for you? If you have anything for those
Mm-hmm.
kids, what would it be? And in addition to that, is like why? Like why are you here? Why are you in your class? What's the real purpose? Like why this school? Why this class? Why these
Mm-hmm.
kids?
Mm-hmm.
And to dig down into that and write and journal and think and reflect. And once we're there, what I ask of teachers is every day before class,
Mm-hmm.
before school starts, it takes
Mm-hmm.
less than a minute to
Mm-hmm.
read through that and just take a moment and just and go inside and think and be with it and consider it, reflect upon it, maybe even edit it. Did it change? Is there another
Mm-hmm.
word you could add?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that 1 minute results in a sustainable kind of passion and excitement for this career
Mm-hmm.
that is unmatched in any other. But to get people to do 60 seconds,
Yeah.
I mean, you think I'm asking for like an hour.
Right.
60
Right.
seconds, man.
Yeah. It's
And
hard.
so like I'm wondering like with your work with teachers and what you do in your career,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of your work has to be somehow selling the 5 minutes, like
Yeah.
getting them
Yeah.
just to do the time.
Yeah. It's funny. There's a lot of irony, I think, to the fact that basically by transitioning from being a public school teacher and English teacher and teacher librarian into now being a mindfulness coach and helping to support my educators is I've basically signed myself up to get people to do something that they kind of don't want to take the time to do.
Yeah.
So that there's something really sort of funny to me about that. But here's what I would say to that. I would say in two different ways. One is when you talk about, like, just going back to what you said a minute ago about inviting people to think about what's the most important thing that they want to bring to their students, the thing that their students are going to remember. At this time, more than any other time in the age of social media and this barrage of information and this constant distraction that we all know, I don't have to, belabor that point. But what I would say is, for me, when you were asking that question, the first thing that came to my mind was this idea of being deeply present with my students. So having that quality of presence and attention. And I know, of course, like you're going to give them your attention, you're teaching, but I know we've all had that moment where, maybe the student is asking for help and they're not saying it fast enough, and all of those things contribute. The fact that we have so much to do and not enough time to do it, whether it's our lessons or our workload. I mean, the story, goes on and on. But because we're so trained, I think, to be hyper efficient because it's a survival strategy, we tend to rush everything when it comes to what we're communicating and certainly our interactions with our students. And so, in many ways, it's just slowing down, even though it sounds like, oh God, but I have so much to get done and so much so much content, et cetera. But if you can just slow down and really give every student the attention that they need to have that presence, I think that it will have such a profound impact on your students and their perception of you and also your stress level. I mean, we all would know what it's like when we're rushing, 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 and you forget something or you messed it up or whatever it might be. So if we can slow it down and really just do the best that we can to tune in and be present. And
Yeah.
when it comes to this idea of trying to get people, to meditate for 5 minutes, it goes back to the old Stephen Covey. There's a lot of metaphors, put your oxygen mask on first. You can't pour from an empty cup. But the one I really like is from Stephen Covey, where you have to stop and sharpen your saw. And the whole idea is, I mean, if you guys are familiar with it, the idea is that you have this, bunch of trees and you have your saw that and you have to cut them down. First, at the beginning, you're going great, no problem. But then the blade starts to dull. And so the problem is it requires more effort on your part to cut down as many trees. And now you're going slower and it's harder. And now your hands are, getting blistered and all of that. Whereas if you could actually just stop to sharpen the saw, you would have been able to be more effective in cutting down all of these trees. And that sharpening of the saw is self-care strategies like meditation. And that's not the only one.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think is really important is a lot of people are talking about self-care, but in many ways, what they're talking about is like self-soothing. So like a Netflix binge, or, just sort of zoning out, or the bubble bath or the wine or whatever. And not that there's anything wrong with any of those things, but to me, self-care is more about systematic changes in your life where you really are establishing healthy boundaries. You're meditating, you're doing things that help to sustain you, not just to calm you down and make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, man, like a weekend retreat at the spa, like that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But, this really, I mean, it sounds like we're talking is more, is along the lines of like preventative care, like preventative medicine, maintenance for
Yeah,
ourselves.
absolutely. Absolutely.
As you're talking about, I haven't thought about this in a long time, but I was in a school and I was just visiting and just hanging out and watching teachers teach and watching see how teachers do the thing. And there was a really loud class. So I thought, let me see what's going on here. And I got and
Mm-hmm.
it's out of control. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
hoping it was gonna be like engaging and awesome, but it was far from that. And I mean, kids are on the desk and phones are everywhere. It was
Heavy.
just, and I thought, well, let me see if I can provide some feedback. And the bell rings and that teacher leaves. This is at a middle school. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's eighth graders, and another teacher comes in for another class, and they're floating around. Teachers are moving class to class. This same group of kids come in,
Mm-hmm.
and a teacher, and this is a brand new teacher, and this gentleman gets to the front of the room, and as soon as the kids come in, first of all, the craziest part, they all go to the door and put their phone in the phone hotel, which is that
Right.
shoe thing at the hang.
Yeah, the shoe
And
thing.
so, right. And so all the kids put their phone away. And then the first thing he says is he welcomed the kids to our class. And then like already the language is different. He's talking about our class and talks about the family. And he says,
Mm-hmm.
let's all just have a minute together. Everybody deep breath in, and the kids, and it's absolute silence. He doesn't, all the kids, the eyes closed, they breathe in deep,
Mm-hmm.
they breathe out deep, and they sit in silence for 60 minutes. These kids are still sweating from all the animal behavior that was happening like 8 minutes ago.
Right,
And
right.
8 minutes later, they're just totally immersed in this moment of being together and taking a moment of quietness.
Yeah,
And man, it was powerful to watch and just to see
yeah.
a whole different environment just on being still and thinking and
Mm-hmm.
breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my friend Rhonda Turner, she just posted on here. She was talking about like just like that discipline alone. Like that's really what is like teaching life balance and discipline to kids when we model what it looks like to take a moment in our own lives
Yeah.
and they can see that and participate in that as well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that actually, because one of the things that happens to me a lot when I do presentations to teachers, and this is just how we're wired, is they start thinking, oh, I could use that with my class, or oh, I might be able to introduce that as something we do like once a week. And so everybody, because that's what we are and how, whenever we attend something, we figure, here's another little something I could put in my toolbox and help my students. And I think that's amazing and fantastic. And when that happens, when someone will raise their hand, like, oh, how do you think this would work for this age group and that sort of thing? And I stop them. I'm like, I think it's great that you're thinking about that. But what I really need you to do is realize that for this time that we're together, I want you to just think about yourself. Because of course, we've all seen
Yeah.
that mindfulness curriculum is being introduced in schools, particularly in the elementary schools, and that's fantastic. Sometimes it's outside providers, sometimes it's a curriculum that's taught to the teachers and then they actually facilitate it. But what I think is really important is, even if a teacher, no matter what grade level, never actually teaches a mindfulness practice to their students, but they themselves still practice mindfulness, i.e., meditation, it will have an impact on their students. It will just happen because that teacher, him or herself, will be more grounded, more present, more responsive as opposed to reactive. There's just that space that happens through practice that allows you to just be so much more there. And so, as wonderful it is for people to teach it, what often happens that I've noticed is that the teachers will get a curriculum and they'll facilitate it and bring it to their kids, and that's cool, they like it, but they're actually not doing it themselves. And so whether you do or don't bring it to the kids, I think it's just going to make such a difference for anyone who's willing to dip a toe into that practice.
Yeah, and Tony Holt, Dr. Tony Holt, you guys should be besties for the rest of you, man. She's awesome, just like you. She's amazing. She's
Right
in
on.
Las Cruces, New Mexico, and she's
Cool.
right that we found that we needed to be purposeful in scheduling.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like making it intentional. Like if we're just gonna, hey, let's try to make that happen, it's never gonna happen. It really has to
Yeah.
be, to make it a part of the culture. You have to first make it a part of the schedule.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I was thinking about is there it is. I knew it. So Trisha, she has Mindfulness Monday in her class. We've
Cool.
talked about. Yeah, I know.
Right on.
And yeah, like that's the thing, is to talk about it, make it intentional.
Yeah.
And here's what I've always said is, if you want to be really, really good at something, like go teach a bunch of other people how to do that thing, and you're going to be amazing
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about making it a habit and you're teaching other people how to make it a habit, like your kids in your students in your classes, then it becomes a habit in your own life. And now
Right.
we have that exponential impact of making a
Yeah.
difference.
Well, and
Yeah.
I would say one of the things that's so important, because I'm very realistic, you have to be realistic about it and not think like, oh, I'm going to do it for 20 minutes. And, with all the, the pomp and circumstance.
Yeah.
And really, to me, it's all about reducing the friction points, which is why I say first thing in the morning before it's about all the rest of your day, in the car when no one can interrupt you unless some disturbing individual comes up and knocks on your window. But, in your car or at home, because everything is pulling us every which way. And it's really difficult to make this promise to yourself, like, oh, I'm going to do this. But yet you're setting yourself up for it to not be as successful as you'd like, because you have to get the friction points out of the way. So I would say, just like I was talking to you a little bit before, that I'm trying to help people to build a daily meditation practice through this like 21-day daily meditation challenge. And one of the things that we talk about is like, pick a time and try to stick with that time so that that's what you do. And there's other tips that come over in that whole challenge, like, if you need a visual prompt to remind you to do that, it's a Post-it note, it's some other, some sort of object or whatever it might be. There's all these different strategies to help reinforce the habit. And that's really what it's about. It's sort of about hacking your resistance, because it is, it's boring. It's a boring 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
it's okay that it's boring, but it still is helpful, even if it doesn't feel relaxing at the time.
Here's the other thing is, and I want to talk more about the 21J challenge, because I'm up for this.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna I've decided
Ooh,
I'm
I
not just
hope
playing
so.
along. I'm in
Right
it to win
on.
it.
Excellent.
And but here's what I need to do, is what I've decided. This is I don't really do resolutions, because I'm always doing that anyway. Like I'm already have goals. I'm always focused. But
Right.
this year, one thing I really want to do different is I want to come up with a better morning routine, like a better
Mm-hmm.
first thing in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
specifically, like I want to do the same thing day in and day out for my morning
Right.
routine. Because like the worst thing you can do is like wake up and pick up the phone and start looking at whatever happened
Yeah.
overnight on
Yeah.
Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever.
Right.
And I really think getting that out of my morning,
Mm-hmm.
and more of this, like these moments where you take care of yourself and be mindful and meditate. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've just have too much evidence of the power of that
Mm-hmm.
to not do it.
Yeah. Well, one suggestion I would make, actually, if it's helpful. So I'm a big fan. I'm a convert to not having my regular phone next to my bed. I actually charge it outside of the bedroom, and there are a lot of
Yeah.
people who are really, really big enthusiasts for that, and I've loved it. But what I do have is I have a very old phone. So the old phone, it doesn't. All it gives me is some Wi-Fi, and I just have like my timer app on there, and I do like to look at my my horoscope every day. It makes me happy. But other than that, I don't have any social media. I don't have any text.
Yeah.
I don't have anything on there. So what I would encourage people to do, we all have so many sort of like older used devices floating around. Put the one by your bed that you can just delete all the other stuff off of. And then it's really just about the alarm, because I do like the whole smartphone alarm thing. It's just about the alarm and some sort of a timer. And if you want to listen to, meditations from me or meditations that you get from some other app, then that's all you leave on that extra device. But that would be something that I would invite people to consider as a possibility as we head into the new year, of trying to distance themselves from having the phone in the bedroom.
All right, here we go. I want to. All right, Tony Hall says she's down for it too. She's game. We'll see how she does on the 21-day challenge.
Yeah.
All right, so now walk me through this. So this is a 21-day challenge. This is free, of course, and this is a service you're providing for educators, and we're kicking it off the first of the year.
Yes.
All right, now tell me how this thing works.
So basically, if you are interested in checking it out, you just go to my website, which is teachingbalance.com. I have one of those annoying pop-ups, but if you want to go directly to the page to sign up, it's teachingbalance.com/21-day. So just 21 DAY.
Right,
and you'll see there that there's a little bit of information about it. There's not a lot to read. And then you just click on there to sign up. There's, no obligation. If you kind of give it a shot and then you're not feeling it, you can drop out at any time. But really, the whole idea behind it is as much about habit building as it is about meditation. So for people who are super new to it, I think this is a really nice kind of entry point to dip a toe in. It's only 5 minutes. It's attainable. Even if you only do like 3 minutes, that's fine too. But the idea is that because so many people are already in this like resolution headspace, which I, like you, kind of feel ambivalent about, to be honest with you.
Yep.
It's just a good time, particularly for us as educators, because we have that extra little bit of time before we go back to school after the new year. So it's nice to kind of get it going and then see how it can fit into your school workday routine. But it's the meditation itself. It'll start off, it's just audio. You'll sign up, you get an email each day. That email brings you to the link for that day's practice. It's just 5 minutes, and there's 3 different kinds. It's either focus on your breath, focus on sounds, or focus on the body. Very quick, very straightforward. And there's a little intro to give you more information. And I'm always available to answer any questions if people want to email me as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right, last question.
Yes, I'm ready.
Because I got it, man. You've you clearly, it works for you. I mean, like, it's obvious that the whole thing works. And but here's the last thing I want to know. When you first started the teaching thing, back, whatever it was, a quarter century ago.
Yes.
Like, were you just frazzled, and was there chaos in your life, and just was it a complete?
Gosh,
for me, it was a mess, man.
Yeah, my husband tells me, because we've been together for that long, he tells me that I cried a lot. I don't remember. I think I've blocked it out. But
if you ain't just,
it's difficult.
If you ain't crying, you ain't trying. That's what I always say about
it's funny. I totally agree. And I had a good first year, and I've been fortunate. But I would say, as I look back, the thought of having had the support of a meditation practice back then would have been huge, because the other thing, honestly, really, after the whole self-awareness and emotional self-regulation and sort of resilience, the other thing that has really profoundly impacted me when it comes to my meditation practice is being so much more gentle with myself. I am hard on myself. I always have been. I'm working on it constantly, and not in this, it's all about not beating yourself up. So the self-compassion piece is a huge part of all of the things that I teach. Really just being gentle with yourself, not putting pressure on yourself. I know a lot of people kind of pick an intention for a new year. Yeah. And honestly, the one I thought I was going to do, what did I think? I was going to do something else. I forget, but I changed my mind because I fell right into that beating myself up trap again. And I was like, you know what I really need? I need grace. Like, I need to give myself some grace like I do for other people. And I need to do it all the time, because, I can't do this work, and nor can any of our educator colleagues do the work that we need to do if we're expending all this negative energy, beating the crap out of ourselves. It's just like a waste of our precious mental energy. And I just have to constantly remind myself to let that go. And that's why it's so much about the types of things that I write about and my meditations and things, because it just needs to be something that we're reminded of all the time.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree,
we're hard
man.
on ourselves.
Telling me, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm gonna do a better job. All right, here's the deal. I'm down. Tony Hall is down. Maybe Trish, I think she might get after it. And
Oh yeah, there's the link. Nice.
yeah, Rachel, she's on. All right. So here's the deal. 21
Sweet.
day starts on for January 1, right?
Yes.
2020. Here we go,
Yeah.
man. And
And if I could,
teachingbalance.com/21-day 21-day. And that's where we're gonna find all the info.
exactly. And I would say for anybody that's interested in doing that, when you sign up, get a friend to join with you because it's so much more fun. When you do stuff like this with somebody else, it keeps it playful. It keeps you feeling crappy if you missed a day. It's not a big deal. And hopefully people are getting my vibe that like, it's okay if you miss a day. And,
Yeah.
the question, is it normal if? Yes. But the whole idea is to just keep this light and keep it playful. Try it. If you don't, if it's not working, that's okay. But at least you're going to know, whether it helps you or not. And the whole doing it with a buddy also helps you guys like encourage each other and cheer each other on, which is fun too.
Yeah. All right, Kristin, thank you so much, man. I really, really
Sure.
appreciate you and all the just all that you're doing, all that you're investing in the lives of teachers to make them just to support them and help them refuel and reconnect and stay grounded and healthy. It's the work is so important, and man, I appreciate you deeply.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me here and allowing me to share more about this with everyone out there. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, teachingbalance.com. Go check it out, man. Let's start this year right.
All right. Have a good year, everybody.
Thank you so much.